Hey guys, I wanted to make a video because I wanted to talk about my thoughts with Kylo and Rey and why why my positive side believes that Kylo isn't going to die in episode 9. So I want to talk about Kylo and Rey, and I want to talk about their Force bond. So it was revealed later, they came out and said that that Rey took the Jedi text when she left Octu. So I feel like since Rey has the ancient Jedi text, that would be the perfect time to explain explicitly the Force bond. I feel like that would be the perfect tool to use that, especially if Rey is reading the text, and they could do this in like a quick scene, and she reads something about Force bonds. That would also be the perfect opportunity to explain the possibility of if one person in the Force bond dies, the other one dies too. And that would also be a great opportunity to explain the whole notion of when you aren't with the person who has a Force bond, or your connection is kind of disconnected, like you close it off from the other person, the Force bond. It is like a wound, and they talk about that a lot in Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. That's really where the story for Force bonds really originated, and they talk about how it feels like a wound when the person and the other who's in the Force bond, if they try to sever their link, it's like they feel empty and hollow, and I think that's what's going to happen with Kylo and Rey. And explaining the Force bond through the Jedi text is also a great way for anyone who doesn't know about Force bonds. It could be explained to them really quickly. I haven't read the novelization of The Last Jedi yet because the closest Barnes & Noble I went to didn't have the book. But I heard from internet buzz that when Rey thinks about killing Kylo after the whole throne room scene, that she feels like the Force isn't done with him yet, and she hopes that he doesn't stay on the dark side path. I'm pretty sure from what I heard that when she's thinking about this, she thinks that the Force isn't done with Ben Solo. So she doesn't think of him as Kylo Ren when she is thinking about this. She doesn't refer to him as that. So my impression of hearing about that is that gives me hope that he isn't going to die in episode 9. To me, from what I've got from The Last Jedi in the interviews and other Star Wars storylines going on, it's talked about balance. And so I keep thinking that Rey and Kylo are supposed to be together, and they're supposed to bring balance. And it talked about in Force Awakens about their destinies being intertwined, about how. So I feel like Rey thinking the Force isn't done with Ben Solo is a positive sign. To me, I feel like that's a little bit of an encouragement to fans. It's an encouragement to me. It makes me think that he's going to do something good in episode 9, something to bring balance and not die. Oh, and did anybody see the deleted scene of Rey talking to Luke, and Luke said Kylo had pretty eyes? He says to Rey, I think the way it goes is, he says, you open up yourself to the dark side for a pair of pretty eyes. I wish that would have been kept in the movie. The eyes, pretty abs, and you know Luke knew what was about to happen in that hut. Uncle Luke knew what was up. He knew what was going on. I also wish the scene where Kylo was waiting for Rey, it's a deleted scene, I wish that would have been kept in. He was waiting for his space girlfriend. So I have a couple of reasons that make my positive side believe that Kylo's not going to die in episode 9. For starters, Kylo and Rey are the main driving force of the story, especially now. And Luke had died in The Last Jedi. I'm sure he'll show up as a Force ghost, but his story is pretty much wrapped up. Han died in Force Awakens, and so most of the characters from the original series, their arcs are pretty much wrapped up. And the way that the story's going, they didn't make Rey be related, thank goodness. But they didn't make her related, and so it's not, this direction of the story is not like a family story. And so the direction of the story is a romance. It's a love story. Whether or not they're saying it explicitly, that's where it's going. They're the driving force of the story, especially now. And people were talking about this theory before Rian Johnson had tweeted about it, and it was discussed a lot in Vincent Vendetta's Reylo videos. They're really great. You guys should go watch them. And people were starting to speculate about Kylo and Rey, and the theory of that Kylo and Rey's relationship was based off of the myth of the belief of the Chinese red string of fate. And basically the way that goes is that the gods matchmake two people together. So the gods tie an invisible red string that keeps the lovers together. And according to the red string of fate, the red string can be twisted, it can get tangled, but it never breaks. It seems like no matter what happens, the Force keeps bringing Kylo and Rey back together. And Rian Johnson had a tweet that was a photo of red string. So that obviously was a reference to the red string of fate. And it makes sense because Kylo and Rey have a Force bond. They are bonded by the Force. The Force is basically being the matchmaker. And every time Kylo and Rey fight, it's like the Force is holding them back from killing each other. Force Awakens, the ground split. In The Last Jedi, the lightsaber split, and they went falling back in different directions. Another reason why I don't think Kylo's gonna die is how much Kylo and Rey are like Anakin and Padme, and I'm gonna talk more about that. And why I also think that Episode 9, I know they've said that it's gonna connect to the prequels, but I think it's more than that. I think it's really going to tie in with the prequels. And I think that Padme, Anakin, and Obi-Wan are going to be mentioned, and probably more than just mentioned. I think their presence is still going to play a heavy part in Episode 9, and I believe Palpatine's will too. So going back to Rey and Kylo, a lot of the concept art of Padme, like this one right here, looks so much like Rey. And also, not just of Padme and Rey, but you look at concept art of Anakin and Padme. It's very similar to Kylo and Rey. And in Revenge of the Sith, what they were originally going to do was they were going to have Padme try and kill Anakin. And that idea kind of played out in The Last Jedi. When Rey grabbed the lightsaber, she felt like she didn't have a choice. But so a lot of the concept ideas of Anakin and Padme have been used with Kylo and Rey. A lot of the deleted scenes of Padme and Anakin remind me of Kylo and Rey. There's a scene where Obi-Wan is talking to Mace Windu. It's a deleted scene from Attack of the Clones. And he's worried about Anakin because he's worried that he's going to get distracted by Padme, and how he has known Padme since he was a child. He has a connection with her. And in the Force Awakens novelization, Kylo and Rey have had visions and dreams of each other their whole lives. My guess is she just didn't know who he was. Maybe she just couldn't see his face because of the mask. But so they have had this connection all this time. They just didn't know it. They just didn't know who each other were until Force Awakens novelization, Kylo says, "It is you." So my guess is that Kylo could have dreamt about Rey when he was a kid. Maybe he dreamed about her while, like, an older version of her, and she could have dreamt about him when she was a little girl. So it's still that connection, similar to Anakin and Padme. And the dialogue with Kylo and Rey in The Last Jedi, pretty obvious. It was about 98% the same of the dialogue between Anakin and Padme in Revenge of the Sith. And not just the dialogue too and the story setting, but also the lighting. The lighting was very similar. The shots were filmed in a very similar way. And Rey going to go get him was like Padme. And the Wayward Jedi talked about this, and I saw pictures of this on Pinterest, and I didn't think of this until I heard him talk about it, and I saw this on Pinterest. When Rey is in that coffin, it's very similar to when Padme was in that coffin. And I love that scene of Rey in the coffin too, because she looked like a princess, and she's literally looking up at her prince, her dark prince. And I also loved it because she looked like a saint, and she just had the whole look of love in her eyes, and then that moment was over and ruined. The shots of Anakin and Padme talking to each other in Attack of the Clones is also very similar to the scene when Kylo turns around and he sees Rey and they're talking through the Force bond. Someone put pictures of it on Pinterest, and it's so amazing. It is exactly the same. Also, Anakin got distracted because of Padme, and I think they execute this idea more in the Clone Wars animated television show, but he cares more about Padme than he does the Jedi Order. He just basically lost his marbles when he went to the dark side, but he cared more about her than the Jedi Order, than the Jedi. And it's the same thing with Kylo. He cared more about her. He killed Snoke for her, and he's gotten distracted from being a Sith Lord, from being a dark side user because of Rey. It's kind of like the same thing with the Jedi were afraid that Anakin was going to get distracted because Padme, Obi-Wan was. And in the novelization of Force Awakens, Snoke says to Kylo, you have compassion for her. It's not her strength that's making you fail. It's your weakness. So he's distracted by Rey. Also, in the Clone Wars television show, Anakin called Padme's ex-boyfriend Clovis a traitor twice. That sound familiar? So there's a lot of parallels if you go and you watch the episodes of Clone Wars of Anakin and Padme. Even that show, there's a lot that's like Kylo and Rey. And speaking of Anakin and Padme, there was a new short from the Forces of Destiny, and it was of Anakin, Padme, and Ahsoka. So in the little short, the premise is Padme and Anakin are trying to get away on this mission, just the two of them, so they could have some time together, and Ahsoka ends up tagging along. And it was always hinted that Ahsoka suspected that Anakin and Padme were in a relationship, but they totally confirmed that she knew that they were in this short. So I have several thoughts on this. One, they're bringing up Anakin and Padme again. In 2018, in a brand new short, they're bringing them up. They're not just like leaving their story just swept under the rug. They're bringing them back up again. So it makes me think that Padme and Anakin are going to have a presence in episode 9. From a marketing perspective, they released this short when The Last Jedi is out on DVD. And this short is released before episode 9 is coming out. I feel like the short of Anakin and Padme, the new short, is also a hint for Kylo and Rey. If they killed Kylo, the whole story development between Kylo and Rey will literally have no purpose, will literally have no point. They have spent 2 movies with Kylo and Rey. Force Awakens, it hinted that there was a connection, especially with the Force Awakens novelization. And then with The Last Jedi, the whole movie was about Kylo and Rey. And what people talked the most about The Last Jedi was Kylo and Rey. I mean, there were articles from several different sources, like Vanity Fair, that said The Last Jedi was the most sexy Star Wars movie. It said it was the sexiest Star Wars movie. Moving past the sexiness, Star Wars has always had a theme of forbidden love. It was with Anakin and Padme. And that theme also was in a book called Lost Stars. It is a great novel. It's by Claudia Gray, and the novel came out in 2015, which is the same year that Force Awakens came out. Lost Stars book is about a forbidden love, a forbidden romance between an Imperial and a Rebel. It is such a good book. I recommend you guys reading it. But looking back at it now, I don't think it was a coincidence that that book came out the same year as Force Awakens. The two main characters are named Sienna and Thane. Thane becomes a rebel. Sienna is an Imperial officer, and they can't kill each other whenever their paths cross. She can't turn him in. He can't turn her in. Sienna says to Thane that she thinks it's the will of the Force for them to be together, that the Force wants them to be together. It's very similar to Kylo and Rey. Rey and Kylo are on complete opposite sides of the war. Another love theme in Star Wars is usually the female character doesn't want to acknowledge their feelings for their love interest. Leia didn't want to admit her feelings for Han. Padme didn't want to admit her feelings for Anakin. And there's a deleted scene from Attack of the Clones where Padme is talking to her sister, and her sister talks about Anakin. And Padme is like, oh, we're just friends. And her sister says, I see the way he looks at you. So in the deleted scenes of Attack of the Clones, it shows even more how Padme is trying to deny her feelings for Anakin. And it's like, Rey, come on, you took yourself to the lion's den. Nobody would go and do that unless that person meant something to them, unless they had feelings or cared about that person. And she looked very entranced, like enchanted when she saw him. And in that elevator, there was a lot of hushed tones and soft eyes and lots of strong eye contact. And all the Star Wars couples argue. They all fight, Han and Leia, Anakin and Padme. And in the Clone Wars television show, Clovis suspects that there's something going on with Anakin and Padme, and Clovis is Padme's ex-boyfriend who's still interested in her. And Padme says there's nothing going on between him and I, we're only friends. And Clovis says friends don't argue with each other like that. And then Clovis tries to make a move on Padme. Anakin walks in, he gets super pissed off and calls Clovis a traitor. Oh, and one last tidbit about the comparisons between Anakin, Padme, and Kylo and Rey. In the Clone Wars anime television show, Anakin in an episode gives Padme his lightsaber. And Anakin says to Padme that she is the most important thing in his life, even more important than the Jedi Order, and how Obi-Wan says that a lightsaber is a Jedi's life, and he gives it to her basically saying, you are my life. I find it poetic that Rey has been carrying around Kylo's lightsaber, because technically it is his because it's Anakin's. If you guys enjoyed my video, please give it a big thumbs up, please like it, and please subscribe. If you guys have any thoughts and theories about episode 9 and Kylo and Rey, please share them in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you guys. I love hearing people's theories, and I can't wait to see all the theories that people are going to come up with now that The Last Jedi is out on DVD. Because a lot of the theories that people came up with for Force Awakens didn't happen until Force Awakens came out on DVD and people could pause it and really analyze it. Like, I watched Force Awakens 100 times and caught new things watching it every time that I didn't catch before. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope we get a good ending. I feel like we deserve a happy ending, especially there's so much suffering with Star Wars. Obi-Wan suffered, Anakin suffered, just so much, like Yoda says, pain and suffering. So I'm ready for someone to have a happy ending. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time, and may the Force be with you.